Well, thanks for tuning in. This is Sunday Recap. We're going to take a minute and do a special bonus episode this week before we record our actual Sunday recap. I didn't want to interrupt our normal Sunday recap flow of talking about, that's my bad, our normal Sunday recap flow of actually talking about the sermon with talking about the coronavirus that much. I mean, it comes up in your sermon a little bit, but I guess we'll call this the social distancing bonus episode. We've moved out of my office because my office space is a little cramped. We've given ourselves a little more room. We've disinfected everything. We've got the big thing of hand sanitizer. Chris is even moving more away from me now. But we wanted to talk about not just coronavirus in general, but about why we chose to suspend our services. We wanted to, I guess, give a space to clarify more on why we chose to do that, what our thought process was, kind of how we've gone through it. And I want to start that, and I guess with a caveat that we have friends, we have other pastors, other churches that decided not to close, and we don't think we're better than them. We love them, we trust them, we support them in their decision. They made a decision based off of their situation, and we want to talk about why we made the decision that we made based off of our situation. So with that caveat in place, I want to spend a little time talking about, maybe we could start with background and decision-making process, where we were thinking about coronavirus. I mean, Dave was actually out of town, so I don't really know that much about your background and your process in it. I do know us and ours. I was probably, I'm guessing, watching it closest, just because Jordan trip's coming up, because I had close family who were traveling, who were in Europe in some of the hot spots. So I was watching it pretty closely. I don't know. Jim was watching it pretty closely. We had talked a couple times in mornings, trying to flow through, okay, this is getting a little ramped up more last week. Chris and I talked a little bit about maybe we can have a prep ready to go of maybe a statement, start working through that type of things. We had that stuff going on. Any of you want to talk about either of that or not really? It's okay if not. Nope. So we basically had been watching it and monitoring it. We've been following it closely. And then Dave had been traveling. I think he probably was talking with it, I'm guessing, with his son-in-law. I'm imagining some, because you spent a lot of time there. And then Thursday you texted and said, hey, we should probably be looking at this a little more seriously for some reasons. Do you want to talk to any of that?
Sure, yeah. And to back up, before we left town, we had already discussed it some too. So as a team we discussed it, and we were still watching it, still trying to figure out how fast it was going to spread, where it was going to spread, trying to understand. We've talked about the CDC website. It wasn't the clearest sometimes, so we were trying to figure out.
Yeah, it's a hard website to navigate.
We rely on. We found the World Health Organization to maybe be a little more clear than the CDC, and so we were sharing information. The elders had a prayer night, kind of one of our regular scheduled prayer nights, so we talked about it a little bit as elders and prayed through that. So then what happened, to bring up to speed for me Thursday, I think just over the week as I was monitoring it more, I really kind of had a personal breakthrough of understanding the speed of transmission issue.
Sure.
And I mentioned this in the sermon, but I think this is the key part of it. We can either see it through an individualistic framework or a community framework. And so something clicked for me where when I started to understand the speed of transmission issue and why people were shutting down large gatherings, I realized, that's about the community and the speed of transmission. Yep. And the basic mathematical logic is, if 5,000 people in your city are going to be in the hospital, you don't want to send 5,000 people to the hospital the same week. And this transmission ramps up so quickly, and it's such an exponential growth, spreads way more quickly than the regular flu, that's what happens when you're not limiting large gatherings and limiting social contact. So I just started to have that realization, like, oh wow, okay, this is an issue, and we probably need to respond because we are in the large gathering business. So
respond in a way that can be helpful to the community, right?
Right. So not really, and that's what I mentioned too in my statement. Our congregation is mostly young and healthy. We do have older folks in our congregation, and so just by age, some of them are more at risk. But even our older folks are generally like very healthy, active older folks. So we just have a very strong. This guy over here. We have a very strong healthy community. So I wasn't really worrying about like our church getting sick and dying. I was worried about our church feeling healthy and transmitting the disease to lots of people.
Yeah, being the catalyst for transmission. And that's what's extra difficult to navigate through is, it might even, we don't know what it's like in Clean right now, right? In Bell County, we know that we have one confirmed case, but we don't know two now. Okay. Well, I haven't seen that report yet, but I mean, things are changing, and
we didn't even know that when we were having this conversation.
Right,
it was still zero.
Yeah, so we're having the conversation the last week or so, even more than that, probably leading up to Thursday. Thursday, we make our decision, and that's before anything, even that there's a case is released. Yeah, and so part of that is the idea of there's so many people that could be seemingly healthy, could be healthy, and are transmitting it. So we're trying to help limit and slow that.
And so the thing we did, I would say, on Thursday seemed a little like forward thinking, which I'm a reactive personality. I'm not a go for it, do the drastic thing now. So that was unusual for me, but I just felt like we have so many people in our population that travel that we were probably even more of a catalyst. We have nobody really calls Clean their home. Like everybody that goes to our church is really from somewhere else. So it's almost more like a college town than a typical town where everybody kind of stays there.
Yeah, and it's not just that we're more of a catalyst, but that we can be more of a help even too, right? So so in suspending our gatherings. So on Thursday we made a decision that we're going to suspend anything that involves more than 100 people. We're going to suspend our child care. So those are ways that it can travel almost without people knowing or without individuals knowing, without us knowing. Children are a big spread because they don't really show symptoms, it seems like. And all of this is really hard to really know. But that's the decision we made on Thursday. And so because we decided nothing more than 100, that meant suspending in-person attendance at our service. So we decided that Thursday, I'd say we've had our statement and our video and everything ready to go probably around 5:30 or 6 o'clock on Thursday night. And then we decided to not post Thursday night, but post Friday morning. And then Thursday late night or Friday early morning, Bell County announced that they had their first case. But before we get to that, Thursday night we kind of had a
moment of doubt.
Yeah, maybe a moment of doubt. Yeah. So I
had a serious moment of doubt.
Yeah, we had decided to make a decision, and then on Thursday night we wrote our statement, we had our video ready to go, and then we looked around us and we're like, nobody else is doing this, right? So at this point, schools aren't closed. No other churches have decided to stop their services, suspend their services. And so we were wondering, like, maybe we are overreacting, I guess. So we decided to think through it more and make sure we were kind of on, I don't know.
Kind of re-looked at all the main factors. There were some trigger points for me personally. We'd heard from a, kind of secondhand that the main regional hospital was running low on beds. That wasn't really verifiable, but we do know across the country and in our county, the hospitals had really been overrun already with flu cases. So we're like, okay, well, I don't know if the number of beds is really a particular issue, but they had already been stressed by flu cases. So we already had a stressed health community. So I kind of reviewed that. I was like, okay, yeah, we still want to support the medical community, love them well by not sending too many cases to them. And then our sister church is in the medical town. So, the predominant number of people at this church are all medical people, and they announced before we did that they were not going to close. And I was like, oh no, well that gave me doubt too, because there are all these medical experts. So I called one of the pastors the next morning. He's like, yeah, I think what y'all are doing really sounds wise and like a good idea. We're not sure. We might still do that ourselves. And then later on they did the same thing as us. So it's like, okay, that makes me feel a little better too, because you don't want to be doing something that like experts think is dumb.
Right.
So we're just kind of trying to weigh all those things out. And in the end, like you said, we made the decision because we thought it would protect other people. It wasn't a decision for us. It was a decision for our community. So.
It was a way, and people are starting to talk like this now. I guess 3-4 days later, then Thursday.
Yeah.
But it's a decision to love your neighbor, right? That's what we were talking about the whole time, was how can we love our neighbor well? How can we love our congregation and guide them well? And that was the decision we made, was based on loving our neighbor almost exclusively, right? Because even local government, etc., there was no mandate or requirement
there was no
to
hard
stop or do
guidance
anything.
on that.
So our decision was made on loving our neighbor, and I think moving forward into it, we're going to have to look at what is the decision, or how do we make the decision based on submitting to the government now too, right? So new guidance is being recommended by the CDC, etc. And I think it's going to continue to be recommended, and things are continuing to be, maybe eventually be mandated, etc. So we're going to have to look at that and talk on that.
The next round of decisions.
In our next round of decisions, yeah. Our first round, though, was based off loving our neighbors. I don't want to spend too much time talking about it. I think we've presented most of the idea. I have a few quotes and ideas on kind of how the church has responded in different situations similar to it, similar to this situation, to kind of help things that I was looking at to help prepare my heart and guide my heart in the decision we were making. But before that, I want to present something for people that they can look at, to look at the spread of exponential growth and why, and what we're thinking through with flattening the curve. Yesterday, or maybe the day before, Washington Post, which is normally a pay-for subscription thing, released a free article that has actual simulations, and so every time you go on the website, it simulates randomly, so your responses to how it spreads and everything will be a little bit different than anyone else's, and even if you refresh the page. I just thought it was really cool. My nerd brain clicked in, but it's a free article on why outbreaks like the coronavirus spread exponentially and how to flatten the curve. I recommend that. It helped me even after we had made our decision to better understand that idea
really
that we
done.
made our decision based off of. So I want to recommend that. And then I want to recommend also, before I talk about the pastor's thing, is the idea that Fred Rogers always talks about. Have you guys seen this? I don't know if this is going around yet or not, but it's always in the back of my mind when people are scared and freaking out, it's the idea, where is it? Fred Rogers often told a story about when he was a boy and he'd see scary things on the news. His mother would say to me, Fred Rogers says, look for the helpers. You'll always find people who are helping. To this day, especially in times of disaster, I remember my mother's words, and I'm always comforted by realizing that there are still so many helpers, so many caring people in the world. And so that really is what we based our decision on, was being helpers, being caring people. We want to encourage the church to be helpers. So I want to tell you, look for the helpers, but also be the helpers. So with that, how the church responded in situations similar to this. So Martin Luther, on dealing with the Black Plague, or the Black Death, his words, he said, sorry, it's split on 2 pages, it's going to be sad and hard for me. So Martin Luther, in his works, volume 43, page 132, he says, that I shall ask God mercifully to protect us, then I shall fumigate, help purify the air, administer a medicine, and take it. I shall avoid places and persons where my presence is not needed in order to not become contaminated, and thus perchance inflict and pollute others, and so cause their death as a result of my negligence. If God should wish to take me, he will surely find me, and I have done what he has expected of me, and so I am not responsible for either my own death or for the death of others. If my neighbor needs me, however, I shall not avoid place or person. I shall go freely as stated above. See, this is such a God-fearing faith because it is neither brash nor foolhardy and does not tempt God. I thought that was super strong and helped guide, again, me in how we were responding. And I know we all responded and made a decision together, but I was trying to help frame myself. And so one of the articles I found related to it, that 9 Marks released, I believe, on the day we were making our decision. And when I was reading through it, I was like, okay, yes. And this is more on, not completely on loving your neighbor, more on responding to the government. So it's going to continue to shape, I guess, my thoughts on that. But 9 Marks released this article talking about how D.C. churches responded when the government banned public gatherings during the Spanish flu in 1918. So the Protestant response was this: they said, resolved, in view of the prevailing condition of our city, the widespread prevalence of influenza, that has called forth for the closing of churches. That has called forth the request from the District of Columbia Commissioners for the temporary closing of all churches. We, the Pastors' Federation, in special assembly, do place ourselves on record as cheerfully complying with the request of the commissioners, which we understand applies to all churches alike. We furthermore recommend that our people shall conduct in their own homes some form of religious worship, remembering in prayer, especially the sick, our allied nations at war, and the present canvass for the Fourth Liberty Loan. So there's a lot going on in the world at the time, and they respond by saying, we cheerfully place ourselves on record with obeying what the government is doing. And then the Presbyterian response, which I thought, Dave, you would like it. Dave loves those Presbyterians.
They're my people.
They're his people. Their response was this. It said, inasmuch as it has seemed wise to the commissioners of the district, after careful consideration of the question, to prohibit the gathering of the people on Sunday in their accustomed places of worship, may I suggest that at the usual hour of morning service you gather in your homes and unite in common prayer to the God of nations and of families, that he will guide us in all wisdom in this time of trial, that our physicians and public officers may be led in their performance of duty and be strengthened by divine help, that the people may be wise and courageous, each in its place. Let us never forget that help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. So I just thought that would help us guide our decision as we make in seeing how we respond to now the government moving into and telling us. Because it feels, at least to me, a little different for us to say we're making the decision based on brotherly love and the situation right now, and this week or next week saying now we've made a decision based on the government telling us to do it, right? So that feels a little different to me. But any other thoughts on our decision to suspend church on Sunday, at least for last week and this week, before we move into the episode?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big question is to hit it from the negative. We just hit it all from the positive. So the negative question is, isn't that a sign of not having faith? Someone posted that specifically in our community. I would say they don't go to our church, but go to another church in our community. Not a pastor, but just a guy at this church posted specifically that if churches do this, they don't have faith. And we interacted a little bit. I challenged him on that. And I think the problem with that is you're saying that if we do anything to mitigate our circumstances, we don't have faith, really. Because what you're doing is when you're saying when a particular person in a particular time in a particular place does something because they think it's a responsible step to take, that is a lack of faith. I mean, you can't have it both ways. You can't say you're having a lack of faith without saying every time anyone ever takes a responsible step to try to help people, it's a lack of faith.
I mean, can churches have armed security guards at their churches? That's similar, right?
Right. So, I mean, even this specific person, I'll just pick on him a little bit as an example. He posted that, of course, in some interaction, because a lot of people got on him for it, he said, well, of course, if you're sick, you should stay home. I'm like, well, isn't that a lack of faith, Right? So it's like, we can tell people to stay home because we're afraid we might transmit a disease, or we can't do that, but we can say, if you're sick, stay. So I'm like, it's all gray areas of what do you think is best in the situation. So you ask God for help. You say, God, you're the one I trust in. And then, as Luther said, well, I'm going to take medicine. I'm going to take basic precautions. I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to do the basic things that I can do. And so Christians have always had to wrestle with that tension. That is our everyday tension. Yes. I'm going to live by faith, and then I'm going to be obedient and try to do the best I can in the gray world of not knowing what every decision will bring. So,
and again, some people made other decisions than us based on their situation where they are and what they're doing, and they'll have to, just like us, continue to make decisions on if and when they close or if and when we reopen. They're all decision points that have to be operated out of trusting in God and using wisdom that He's given us, right? Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I think maybe one of the encouraging things that can come out of this is we're having this dialogue about
Mm-hmm.
how important it is to meet together in person, and so there is
we
kind of
don't want this to be
Yeah,
normal.
we don't want this to be normal.
Yeah.
So that should
Yeah.
definitely be said. We don't think it's okay to only ever watch videos from home. We
Mhm.
do praise God that we can do that when it's necessary.
Mhm.
But I've just enjoyed people. This is not like a thing that comes up in your mind necessarily very often for a lot of people. It was like, what's the difference between
Mhm.
real face-to-face church, as you put it, Dave, and just doing it online? And is there a big difference? Is there a pro and con? What does God do when we're all together versus when we're scattered? Just great questions that we really have needed to talk about as a country and for a long time. So hopefully this is a good springboard for some of that as well.
Yeah, I think it's a good discussion to have, and I think I brought this up in the sermon too, but Corona specific. Paul talks about I'd rather be face to face while he's using technology to communicate with his church, right? So he's using
The technology of the day.
the technology of the day, ink and paper, to communicate with people. The technology of Roman roads, great travel, great postage system, quote unquote, at that time. So there was like really strong communication and technology for people to be able to communicate with each other across long distances, more than normal at this time in history, or more than they'd previously had, widespread in history. So he's using technology to communicate with churches and saying, I'd rather be face-to-face with you. So he's saying the technology is better than nothing, and face-to-face is better than using technology. And I think that's the same thing we're doing now. We're saying, yeah, this is better than nothing. We like that we can actually communicate online with people. But yeah, we prefer face-to-face, and we want to get back to that as soon as possible.
Yeah, and we'll probably look into options for, I know I already am, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as a team, but options for now that we know more of you will be really literally stuck at home. Like, how can we push more content? How can we provide you with more resources to help train your kids? Let this be a time of resetting of family worship, right? We talk about family worship all the time. Maybe this is something that's going to force us to get good at it, right? So we're going to look at how we can help you in that, how we can push content. This is our new studio, so our new live everything studio, I guess.
Social distance studios.
Social distance studios. SDS? I don't know, that's weird. Anyways, I think, any other thoughts, ideas? I think we can end the bonus episode.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
All good.
All right, we're going to end the bonus episode, but we'll just remain live, right? That's what we're doing? All right. So bonus episode is complete. Coronavirus is on the floor. And we're going to start this fresh and new, talking about the sermon. Obviously, coronavirus might come up some, but this is going to be the beginning of the actual Sunday recap episode. Well, thanks for tuning in. This is Sunday Recap, a weekly edition of the Grace Bible Church podcast, where we talk about life and faith based off of our sermon this past Sunday. For more recordings of our sermons, for recordings of our podcast, and to submit any questions or comments you might have, visit bgrace.org/podcast. For more information about Grace Bible Church, visit bgrace.org. I'm Joey Colon, one of the assistant pastors here.
I'm Chris Webster, the pastor of I was looking at my laptop.
Jim Wilson. I don't know what I'm doing today, but I got a lot of it to do.
I'm Dave McMurray, teaching pastor.
Well, this is a new a new location, I guess, for our podcast. I finally just got Chris and Jim to talk. We recorded a bonus episode just before we started this episode, so it might be attached at the end, or it might be its own thing, but we talked about why we chose to suspend our service this past Sunday and the Sunday before. Good talk. I appreciated it. I don't know. I think it's good. I'm proud of us and our team and our teams for responding, and our ministry directors and leaders for how they're responding and how they're figuring this all out. We're in it together, and what we're doing together is worshiping in the chaos, right? We're figuring out how that works.
Well
So
done.
this week in our sermon series on Talking with God, the Ancient Art of Prayer, we're in week 4 of a 6 or 7 week series, and we're talking about worshiping in the chaos. You went to Psalm 40 this week you were planning on doing something else originally.
So I was planning on doing a worship sermon. I was planning on using the New Testament texts from Ephesians, I guess it's 5, and Colossians 3 that talk about sing hymns to one another, sing songs, hymns, spiritual songs. And then I was also going to use Psalm 105. So I was already in the Psalms. I'd already outlined the sermon. Actually, I'd basically written the sermon. And then all this craziness happened. And I was like, no, this is too positive. We need to go back and pull some of the lament back in here. So I switched to Psalm 40, which has both all those positive aspects of where I'd been going with singing and worship, but it also had more of the chaos and social disruption, pain, worry, lament as well. It jams them together. So much so that I mentioned this in the sermon. Some critical scholars are like, oh, first half and second half, they've got to be two different psalms that someone stuck together on accident because it makes some people think it doesn't go together.
Yeah. So you wanted to be more apocalyptic in your sermon.
That was the goal.
And the world is a little crazy right now. I think in Killeen, we haven't quite seen it as much as some other places yet, but it's definitely coming, right? If we're following the suit of everyone else, people are gonna be more crazy. There's not gonna be any toilet paper on the shelves. I'm sorry.
I mean, we're already there, dude.
Are we already there?
Oh, yeah.
I social distance from stores always, so I wouldn't actually know. So we're already there.
No, the toilet paper disappeared last week.
And
Okay.
no shopping carts at the commissary at 9 o'clock this morning.
Wow.
Wow, yeah.
I did read that. I actually read a great response from Purell to the coronavirus and a great response from HEB to the coronavirus and how much they're in it for the community and loving their neighbors and working hard. And
that's cool.
Shout out to all of our grocery store workers. We actually have some grocery store workers in our church, in our congregation. But
and I think it got a little crazy a little earlier in our community at the grocery stores
because we were seeing
because I think we've got medical. We're predominantly, our county is
sure.
East side of the county's medical, west side of the county soldiers, a zillion teachers in between, tons of teachers. So I think those three people groups were like very conscious of what was happening because of their work. They knew what was going on probably more than other communities that did not have cases yet. So.
Okay. Makes sense. Well, I don't want to spend all our time talking about coronavirus, but you did in your sermon, and so we will have to.
Mm-hmm.
But anything else on why you chose Psalm 40? You ditched your sermon that you already had prepared. Yeah, obviously, we're going to be getting that next week, I'm assuming, or something.
It's gone forever.
Okay, gone forever. Coronavirus ate my sermon.
The sermon that never got preached.
Oh, man.
Yeah. A lot of the same ideas did get worked in.
You should preach it from your bunker this week.
Ooh, good idea. Bonus sermon. That'll be pushing more content out, right?
Yeah. I will say that this Sunday, like speaking of preaching from your bunker, was a little weird and... I mean, it felt weird to be in the building. You know, all of us were here. Staff was here, and then people who were getting baptized basically was all that's here. So we actually had them sit in the front, so in the camera shot it looked like there were people here. Some, I mean, I felt like that was comforting some, but it was.
It helped me to preach to a few faces, and I apologized to them beforehand. I was like, you'll probably all get stared at more because there are, fewer, lesser. Not as many.
I had the thought that you've actually been prepping for this for a long time, doing the sermon previews with just like 3 people in the room. So
I do the sermon preview on Thursday now. Joey got me doing this about a year ago, and sometimes it's just 2 of the assistant pastors. Yeah. Sometimes it's like 5 or 6 people, but it's never very many. Yeah.
So you're ready.
Yeah, I did think so too.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for getting me ready.
And we tried to do a better job with our live stream this week. We tried to get some more camera angles. I tried to get a shot from behind you guys, which I thought was a cool shot, except Aaron Riley playing the Congo. What was he playing? Djembe?
Mm-hmm.
The djembe.
That was my...
Whenever he hit the bass, the whole camera would shake. So I had to be watching it like, oh, there's a build. I got to switch off of that shot.
That was my other sorrow, is our main shot was just me and Rachel. And there's like ghost keyboard and ghost djembe. I don't think you ever saw Aaron or Eunice's face. So I'm sorry,
so you
Eunice
could see
and Aaron.
Eunice's face
You
from
did?
a side shot.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
I tried to get Aaron, but the only shot I got Aaron on was when he was walking back on stage, and his face was like an inch away from the camera. So I felt horrible about it afterwards. I was like, oh, the only shot with Aaron in it.
It was
But-
all a great metaphor for chaos, and it went with Dave's sermon.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cross was actually crooked most of the
crooked
time.
cross.
I
and,
probably
like,
bumped it during the baptism.
Yeah. And so I had to sneak up and straighten it. But you couldn't really tell in the shot. It was just a
Okay.
funny, like, all these
That's
little
great.
things.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
It was good.
It was a good metaphor.
And I
Yep.
was just confused because of, it was a very slightly different order of service. So the whole time my brain is like, okay, wait, do I say this the same way or do I say this
Mhm.
differently? Everything.
Yeah,
everything we did.
Dave doesn't do great with differences in the order of service.
I
It just,
get
I mean, it's a different rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm throws me off.
But we did have tons of you join us from home. We got some pictures and everything. I thought that was really cool. But I don't know. Any other thoughts on having church alone with us in our bunker?
I was kind of, there was an excitement. There was a little bit of a frustration too, but there is this exciting thing of like, we're taking over the world, we're spread out, or there's singing happening. I know it's very scary to sing in your home. I was just thinking through that, like, I would be weirded out, holding my phone in front of my face and singing along.
A lot of you did it on your TVs, which I think is the way to go.
Yes, if you can do that, so yeah. But there was an excitement of, like, we're still doing this thing, and we're spread out, and just the idea of the spread out praise, especially during the music, which is what I was thinking about was, I was kind of excited too.
Yeah.
Weird and excited.
Open your windows, right? That's what you said. Get your neighbors. I had a pastor friend post that it said 1 million times from the pulpit, the church is not a building. Well, it's true then, and it's true now. We're the church gathered to be the church scattered. Embrace the day. I was like, such victory in that statement almost too, right?
Yeah, that's
We
really
gather to be the church scattered.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about scattering to tell people, right? Worship tells others. Did you change your points last minute, or are these actually accurate, the ones I have?
Those are right.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Worship tells others was your first main point.
Mm-hmm.
Man, double-sided is killing me here, Dave.
Double-sided's confusing.
Worship reorganizes our life, and worship works during the worst of times. Anything about your big main points before we move into more specifics?
I just want to apologize that I printed your notes double-sided.
You should.
I tried for 10 minutes to tell the computer not to, but it wouldn't listen
That's
to
okay.
me.
You printed in color too, Jim. I'm tattling
That's
get
90
double when we print
cents.
for every one of these too, huh?
Ooh, expensive notes.
Expensive notes. Oh man. All right. Anything on your main points? Worship telling others, worship reorganizing our life, and worship works during the worst of times?
No.
Okay, cool.
No.
Anything stand out to anybody? Wycliffe dancing?
Wycliffe dancing. What does that mean, Joey? He's reading my notes,
I
which
don't
make
know.
no sense.
This is so great.
Good one. I like these notes.
I may have spent too much time preparing for the bonus episode than I did for the actual episode.
The James, I've always loved the James Noriega quote. We worshipped our way into this mess, and by God's grace, we will worship our way out.
Yep.
And as a musical worship guy, I'm always kind of testing. Am I thinking too much of worship? Am I looking at everything through the framework of worship, or is this really true? And I think this one still passes the test because, we were created for worship. All of life is worship, and so the breakdown was a misdirection of worship or a folding in upon ourselves. And I just love that as just this huge framework for all of life. What went wrong and what's the way out? And so, I just loved that you started with that. Good work.
And I was trying to blur between concrete singing as worship and all of life worship. I was trying to purposefully blur that line, recognizing that it is both. I mean, worship is both. So Jim was about
Well, I was just thinking in the very introduction, the whole idea of don't deny the chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, there's this tendency among Christians to say, well, I should just put on a smiley face and look for the silver lining, and everything's going to be wonderful, and we shouldn't do that. We should acknowledge, yes, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Now what am I going to do next?
Yeah.
Who am I going to turn to? And the answer is we're turning to God. He's got the answers. Yeah.
He's the ultimate helper.
Yeah, and my little intro story about going to the grocery store was somewhat just intuitive, but actually in retrospect, I was like, oh, that worked pretty well.
I'm so good at this.
I did a good one. Well, because I broke a rule. So one of my rules is don't share a personal story that makes me look like I am the hero.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of
a
that,
good rule
but it
to
was
have.
like, yeah, it's a good rule for a preacher because, yeah, you can't sit for long under a preacher that thinks he's the hero. But the story was like that I was walking through the crazy grocery store. People were worried and scared looking, and I was like whistling and smiling. I texted my wife, people look scared, but I'm whistling and smiling at them in the name of Jesus, which I literally was. But then I joked in telling the story while I was repeatedly wiping my hands with the cart wipes, you know. And so I was trying to say that's the tension we live in, you know, like, oh, I'm wiping my hands, I'm wiping down, like I was taking items off the shelf and like wiping them down and putting them in my basket and wiping off the, you know, the handle of the cart. But I was also trying to bring joy and whistle and have fun in it, you know. So that to me kind of had the two sides of worshiping in the chaos.
I like that.
That really is a fascinating thing to try to work out, especially here.
Mhm.
Like I really appreciate that we are honest about, you know, even in our service, like this is strange that we're doing this, but we're going to do it anyway. But it does bring up to me that question of weep with those who weep and rejoice with those who rejoice. That versus also help them get out of their weeping, or you know what I mean? Like, so that maybe
Yeah.
it's just the full story of come and empathize first and then give them hope, but don't just slap them in the face with a Bible.
Yeah.
Recognize that things are scary and hard first. I don't know.
But
Yeah.
don't not give them hope.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
Don't
right.
just say, "Yep, this is terrible," and just sit there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tension.
Mm.
Cool.
It's hard. But worshiping does tell others. It has to.
Mhm.
So you said start with your close friends. You gave some examples on how to do that. Yeah.
Just specifically sharing your story with other people, telling them about. A lot of small groups do this. A lot of small groups have time where they just say, we're going to go around the circle, you know, maybe one person a week, and just share your faith story, how you came to faith, how you grew in faith, you know, what that all has looked like. So it's really helpful to practice that in community, and people that already kind of maybe know half of your story. Because I think we jump real quickly to kind of cutting edge evangelist, my most atheistic friend, I've got to like just focus on them and tell them my story. And so we kind of go from 0 to 60 really fast, and that feels artificial and weird to even bring it up to that person. So I think we just want to get in the habit of being transparent people that are sharing our story with everybody. So.
Yeah, it's different for every personality, surely, but the way I think about it too, and I need this reminder again and again, is I think of the passage about seasoning your conversations with salt. For me, it's like I would love to, in normal everyday life, I would like to take out churchy words and things that even smack of like just religiosity and too far, you know, and so for me, it's kind of like opening that filter back up and saying, when there's times when I'm just feeling blessed by God and like thankful for what He's done or what the weather is like, let that come out even around people who don't believe in God. You know, don't filter out that because I know they don't believe it. But
Yeah.
you know what that's what
yeah,
it sounds like to me. Like
That's really helpful because, I mean, we actually say, I mean, one of the phrases I'll say is we try to do worship in a way that eliminates churchy language, you know, trying to translate it, but that can go too far where you're like, I don't want to mention anything about church or faith. And like, that's not the idea. The idea is to eliminate lingo that is like a barrier to people. But yeah, that's a tension in our life. I talked to one guy, this was at a conference a few years ago, and he said he tries to out himself in relationships as quickly as possible. He tries to just slip in there like, oh, good to meet you, neighbor. Yeah, I go to Grace Bible Church, and or I'm a Christian, or, you know, he tries to like just get it out. This is who I am, and it's a part of my life quickly without the like. And so let's talk about faith right now, but just getting it out on the table. And he finds that makes it easier to talk about things as their relationship progresses.
I think that's good.
Yeah, I love that. I think there's a reaction from maybe the '90s church T-shirt, church bumper sticker movement, the WWJD bracelet era,
Yeah.
But like, I do feel we've probably gone too far. It's a check for me again, and this is not preaching at people, but trying to process myself. But even that, like, would you put a fish on your car? Maybe not. Maybe it's anything. Put a Grace Bible Church logo on your car. And that's that same feeling, well, no, because why? But should I because why? This whole like, well, then everything I do will be judged based on that lens. And what if I accidentally cut someone off in traffic? But I feel like that's what he's doing, is he's almost pushing himself into this place of being a representative of Jesus and owning that. And there's something risky and scary and maybe good. I'm not saying church bumper stickers are what we all should do always, but I have thought about that thing of like, if everyone knew all the time that I'm a Christian, is that a good or bad thing, and why, right? And that's what I'm talking about too, of when we say this tell others, sometimes we can go all the way to this perfect full gospel presentation. That's what I need to be doing. And I'm trying to like say yes, but you can build a foundation of, man, praise God for this weather. Like, that sounds cheesy, but if that's actually how I'm feeling, like, say that. And man, I'm so thankful for whatever, just little mentions of I believe in God, and I, and I, don't pray for people to see you, but there is a backed up version of that that's like, do you ever talk about what actually matters to you the most? We should all do that in some way, right?
I think it goes too with this idea. Some people think like, well, I didn't share the gospel if I haven't shared the full gospel and all the steps and everything 100%. But it's something, maybe when I was in college there was a little movement on this, but the idea that we're constantly preaching the gospel and we should be sharing the gospel, and at some point you should give a full picture of it, but you can be giving parts, and almost the 3 circles method, where maybe we're just talking about one circle right now, but you're my neighbor, and we're gonna talk again, and we'll move to the next or whatever. But like, if we feel like we constantly have to give the whole gospel and you're a sinner and you're dying, and if you don't this and that, like if we don't do that all the time, then we're not doing it right. Is like a feeling we have.
Well, and I thought that was in the text real strongly with the, like, I can't say it all. I can't tell what's verse 9.
Yes.
I'll proclaim and tell of them, yet they are more than can be told. It's just, so we should carry that sense of awe of like, dude, I couldn't even unload it on you how good the good news is. I couldn't give you all of it, but I can give you most of it or part of it or what the Spirit leads or allows for today, so.
Yeah.
And I think there's a way in which we try to take control, thinking we are responsible for what happens to this person,
Right.
when it's the Spirit working through what we say in them. And so we have to release that and just know that all I'm responsible for is worshiping God in my conversation and saying, I love Jesus because, this is what he did to me and for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hit that really well, Dave, too. Tell the gospel badly,
Oh, yeah.
but do it. Start,
that.
and you'll get better. Yeah.
I don't think it's even a quote anymore because I'm quoting myself quoting him a few times. It's a rough paraphrase. But, yeah, it's the best way to get better at it is by doing it badly.
And you said start with close friends, start with people that you trust almost, right? And tell them you trust Jesus. And then you can move on more and more to different people who it might be a little harder for. You can practice on people.
Let me say one last thing that's really important to me. Do it in the way God has made you as well. Like not just, I don't know, man. I feel, well, maybe I do. I don't know about we. Maybe you guys do. But this, like, that's the way to do it. Watching some great evangelist evangelize, that's the way to do it. And writing off all the ways that God has specifically wired me to share the gospel. And, obviously, to me, that comes back to music. But I know any like, look at your hobbies, look at the things you love.
Yeah.
Can you use that as a conversation starter? Can you use that as a way to rub elbows with people who need to know about Jesus? Like, don't write off that you've been wired to reach a certain people and a certain type of person, and you have a unique take on the gospel that is beautiful and needed. And so just that as well. Don't do some homework on, man, I love gardening. What do I do with that? Do I join a garden club and start talking to people? Do I share my produce with others and tell them that Jesus loves them? I don't know what that is. Does that make sense? I just think that's a thing we need to say again and again and again.
Yeah, that's really good. And I try to encourage people specifically with gifted evangelists or gifted apologists, who are giving reasons for the faith. We learn from them and watch them primarily to encourage ourselves as believers, so that we can then have our rough, less gifted conversation with our friends. And we have to keep those two things separate, because exactly like you're saying, we watch the world's greatest apologist, and we're like, I'm not that smart, I'm never going to talk to anybody, and that's not the point. That, like, what he's saying, maybe you can watch him with your friend, or you can watch him and be encouraged and then have a rough conversation with your friend. Those are the two options. But the watching him and then imitating him perfectly, that's not really realistic. So.
Cool. For almost anybody.
Yeah.
I agree. Worship reorganizing our life. That was English. Worship reorganizes our life. Point 2.
Yeah. I had subpoints on this one,
Yeah.
guys.
Yeah, you did.
I was taught to do subpoints in seminary, but I never do them because I'm just not that good.
There's not enough time for subpoints.
Yeah. My brain's just not that organized, but it just came out this week in the text.
Speaking of time, I will say that people were like, man, was Dave really short this week? I was like, well, he was 40 minutes long. That's shorter than he's been recently. Anyways.
I was 5 minutes closer to the time I aimed for. Yeah.
Good work.
You should just always say, time flies when you're having fun. Glad you were having fun.
But don't mimic him. It's not your job to be just like him.
Yeah.
Worship reorganizes our life. Our lives. Our life. Any thoughts on that? Heart obedience, you talked about. You talked about corporate identity some. The inclusio of the great congregation. Thoughts, ideas?
So I was just fascinated by the tension there of we tend to, well, actually, some of the debate about closing church is between the great congregation people and the heart obedience people, right? So the heart obedience people are like, we're the church wherever we are. Who cares, And then the great congregation people are like, we're only the church if everything's in place and it's formal and public. And that's a tension of who we are to be as God's people. We are to be a corporate organization that has public meetings. The New Testament definitely pushes us in that direction. But that's a lot harder for the persecuted church to pull off, and it's a lot harder for us to pull off when there are pandemics. But we also can't be that without the heart obedience. And so I just loved how that worked together in verses 6 through 10. He's knitting together heart obedience, and then this great assembly, this great congregation, we would call it big church, So I think that's a beautiful balance of how we do the Christian life.
Thoughts, ideas? Silence?
I feel like I just was preaching.
Yeah, that's all right. Go for it.
Good.
I'm like, all right, next
Jim's
point.
going to say something. I can see Jim's going to say something.
Yeah, I think he is too.
I would just think about the process that we go through in our lives as God changes us and moves us from people who are doing whatever we want to do to worshiping Him in a more concrete way. And it starts taking over pieces of our lives that we wouldn't have anticipated and moves them towards worship. And so it does really reorganize and reprioritize your life because you are doing things you didn't do before because of what God has done in you. So I think that's really fascinating and something really good to just reflect upon. How has God changed my life since He did the quickening of my heart? And,
Yeah, and being an active part of the corporate is such a funny word, but yeah, the group identity, the larger
I used corporate on purpose 'cause
gathered,
it's uncomfortable.
There you go. Well, it's making me think things. So what my thought is, being an active part of shaping the corporate identity and encouraging and doing that. I do think we've probably, our most corporate interactions are probably with brands now, and it's made me think so many brands have stolen this church idea. They've turned into activism and causes, and it's like, man, you just make shoes. Like, you make shoes. But
they make them real well.
They make them but so if you think about, okay, what's this quote unquote liturgy we've been trained in? It is this brand liturgy of, I'm going to identify with whatever, Nike, until they go against something I don't like, or until they make a mistake, or until whatever. And then guess what I'm going to do? Stop buying from them. So that's our interaction with the. So it's like, I feel like I belong to something, and I'm a part of something, and I want to agree with everything they ever do or say, because that's what they've walked us into. Is we are activists. You're adopting a lifestyle. You are driving in the mountains. You're not just a Toyota driver.
And yet
You
it's
are
still consumerism.
Yes, and
Simultaneously.
you can instantly just, I'm done with you. See you later.
Yeah.
And so I do see that happen a ton with people in churches. It's, I'm with you as long as I never disagree with anything you ever do or say, and you never make a mistake. And then when you do that, I'm stopping buying from you, Nike Church.
Yeah.
Instead of, God's called me to be, I don't know what you call it, one of the CEOs of this church, one of the the people
Investors,
that is
a
the
partner,
stakeholder.
where I'm man, that's a great, there's a great metaphor, right? Like, I am in it for to an extent, right? Like, we've got hills to die on and not, but man, really, you are the church, and so that going from that heart identity or the heart obedience, and God's grabbed you and He's taught you to love Him, and you're on fire for Him, and you're trying to humbly, repentantly seek after Him and follow Him, and bringing that to the church and saying, this is not Nike, this is me as a part of what God has made. I'm a part of this body. This is, if I leave this, it's going to be an arm chopped off kind of experience, and that's just a bigger picture. So
Yeah, that's good.
long metaphor. There you go, guys.
Good work.
Good.
Well, thoughts, ideas on that? Because we did the bonus episode before we started this one, I have no clue. I'm in a time warp continuum. Did we talk about this point for 10 minutes? I don't know. Did we talk about it for an hour and a half? I don't know.
Welcome to my world, Joey.
Usually,
That's how I feel every moment.
Usually in it to win it. Well, we'll move to main point 3, and all of our things blur anyways.
Good.
So, worship works during the worst of times, from Psalm 40, verse 11 through 17. And your illustration was the coronavirus, so we can't escape the coronavirus even talking about it here. It's haunting us. Thoughts on it? Should we worship until only when things are going well? Good little rhyme there. Did you do that on purpose?
Oh.
What about when the economic downturn hurts? What about when we lose someone we love? How should we worship when things are hard? Thoughts, ideas. There's basically not much on the sheet for me to go off of.
You there, Joey.
You just threw them
You're
all
just
out.
gonna have to remember everything
So what do
I
y'all
said
think?
in the third
It was
point.
so hard. I had a really hard time paying attention because I was running the live stream and I was trying to be all fancy and stuff, and things were not working in a fancy way. So
That's all right.
I'd be like, put this camera on the screen, and then the other camera shows up. I'm like,
Well,
what just happened?
I kind of went back and pulled in some of the lament stuff from Psalm.
Yep.
There we go. I was not talking to the mic. I went back and pulled in some of the some of the lament stuff from Psalm 42. And as I said, that's really why I picked Psalm 40 instead of Psalm 105 and Colossians 3, and kind of switched my worship text because this held them together. And so the Christian life is worshiping when things are really hard. It's also worshiping when He just pulled us out of the pit and we're feeling it, and we're like, He just saved me. Everything's awesome. It's also worshiping when we're just unsure, we're scared, we're nervous, we feel like we're under condemnation, or we're dying, our health is bad. And so went back to that illustration too of we're actually praising God when we come to Him with our problems. And that should be an active part of our worship.
I just connected two funny things in my head, but I think it's an important thought to. I feel like worship is also like well, gathered worship. So specifically, worship gathered together, the singing part, the communion, all these things we get to do together. To think of those as a fire drill, right? I was just seeing some church put out it was basically a knockoff of The Office. Do you remember what it was? Dwight did. He like pretended to light the building on fire and freaked everybody out. In
most
The
horrible
Office, sorry,
and funny
The
episodes ever.
Yeah, and I don't remember what he did, but there was smoke coming in, and it was basically this.
People were completely freaking out. He
And
like
so-
trapped people and lit a smoke bomb.
Yeah.
So people thought it was a real fire.
His idea was, we're going to see if you guys are really trained and ready for this. And so, but they're just throwing things and killing each other and whatever it was. But it just made me think of, I've just been lately thinking a lot about the fact that we can think of musical worship, or gathered worship, I should say, bigger than musical, but the gathered worship as just a slice of our whole life worship. And it is that. It is just one segment of it. But I also want to keep encouraging people that it is practice. It is building muscles. It is like so many aspects of it are preparing you for what you're going to need to do outside of this room. You're gonna need to pay attention. You're gonna need to focus back on God's word. You're gonna need to. So when something. So again, back to that. This is like a fire drill thing, and like you're saying, worship works during the worst of times. I think the way God has built it is you should have been worshiping already before the worst of times so that you're ready in the worst of times to keep going. So it's going to be really difficult. By God's grace, he can do that. But when the hardest thing hits, it's going to be really difficult if you have not practiced worshiping before then to just say, okay, now I'm going to worship. Like, more than likely, you're just going to start throwing chairs. You don't, right? Like, so that's why there is this beautiful pattern of meeting together and refocusing on God's word and practicing walking life together. And there's just so many things I could talk forever about, but that's one thing I want to say is it matters so much what you have rehearsed before everything goes to heck and there's chaos. Like, so.
Cool.
And look for the helpers.
Look for the helpers.
Jim Halpert grabbed the copy machine and was using it as a battering ram to try to get the door open. Way to go, Jim.
Yeah, well, somebody took a chair and was banging against the vending machine to try and get food out, too, so I don't watch The Office, never have, but I have seen the meme.
You see the memes fly
People climbing into the ceilings. It's bad. It's bad. Yeah, don't let it be crazy. Look for the helpers. Be a helper.
And I finished with 2 Corinthians 4.
Yeah, you did.
And I love that passage.
You want to read it, or you just want to talk about loving it?
I love it so much.
You don't have to read it. I was just
Anybody else wanna
wondering.
read it? I say too many things. Anybody else love it?
I love it. I'll
Okay.
read it.
All right.
Oh, wait, I've been talking too much. Jim, can you
Jim,
please
read it.
that for
I got to
us?
find it first.
It's on the back
double-sided
side
notes.
of a
there it
second
is.
page of a third note.
Okay, here we go.
All right.
For what we proclaim is not ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, with ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, "Let light shine out of darkness," has shone in our hearts to give the light of knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. But we have this treasure in jars of clay, to show that the surpassing power belongs to God and not to us. We are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body of the death of Christ Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our bodies. For we who live are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that the life of Jesus may be also manifested in our mortal flesh. So death is at work in us, but life in you.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, especially in light of coronavirus, we're always about death, right? Like,
Fire
we're-
drill.
We're always thinking about it. It's not like this is new for us, right?
Yeah.
Like, loving our neighbor isn't what's new for us. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Like,
Being
none of it should be
inconvenienced
new.
to help others is not new.
Yeah.
Facing physical death and emotional pain, all these things that are all kind of mixed together. Economic downturn, all these things are swirling around simultaneously, and we run into that. We try to be the helpers, as you were saying earlier. To bring it back to Mr. Rogers, I love that little ending point where he says, "We are being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so the life of Jesus may also be manifested in our mortal flesh." So our flesh is dying, and we're running after that. We're not running away from that. We're running after that, saying we're giving ourselves up. We're jars of clay. We know we're jars of clay. We know we're frail. We know we only have a limited amount of time, and so we're giving ourselves to others. And he says, so death is at work in us, but life in you. So it's almost the exact opposite of the virus in a sense. There's this transmission, this contagion that we're passing on, but we're passing on resurrection life, which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, well, I want to move towards ending. I don't know if we need to end this minute. I don't know if you have other thoughts, but in the idea, and I don't remember if we talked about it in the bonus part or in this, but the idea of how you can do that and look at ways that you can do that. How can you help share the gospel? How can you translate his song and sing it to others, right? Maybe that really looks like songs for you, and maybe this becomes a time of musical creativity and ways you can share the gospel. Maybe it looks like art. Maybe it looks like, I don't know, fixing cars or breaking things, or I don't know.
Just
Jim,
noticing what there is, the beauty that God has
Sure.
given us around us, the things that happen. You go, wow, God did that.
Yeah.
Just reminding yourself, I prayed for that, and it's happening.
Yeah. Or even maybe it will be stillness, right? Maybe stillness is whatever. We're going to work through what that looks like for us. I'm going to push Dave to create a lot more content when he's in the office.
More content.
We'll see. We'll see what that looks like. I'm thinking, if I put you on the spot right now, I don't know how he'll feel about it later, but I'm thinking maybe we can get him to maybe do our Lent prayer guide every day live on the interwebs for y'all. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. We'll talk about ideas and
I
thoughts.
just did a lecture on Calvin for a private school, and Calvin preached like 27 hours a day. It was amazing. I don't even know how he did it because it's not physically possible.
That's exponential growth.
Yeah,
right there.
exactly.
Well, I just want to encourage y'all and encourage us to love our neighbors well, to figure out what that looks like, to look at what it looks like to be the helpers. I want to encourage you I'll give you one patriotic push and one biblical push. How about that? The biblical push is James 4:8. Wash your hands, you sinners. The patriotic push is ask not what staying home on your couch can do for you, but what staying home on the couch can do for your country.
That's good.
But not really. It's not.
You should run for
Not
president.
really good. I'm not doing that ever. But just want to encourage with the ideas of loving our neighbors and encourage you to look into what that looks like for you, for your life, in your situation. And also, I guess, encourage people to not be afraid to reach out to us too, right? Like, we've suspended our services and closed large gatherings, but please call us, email us, comment on the streams when streams are happening. Come to the office during the week. We'll be here. Keep a safe distance from us, but we're gonna be here. I mean, seriously though, right? Like we're not gonna just say, come on in and let's hug and kiss and whatever. But
no kissing, no large gathering, but we're here.
But we're here. Come talk. Especially, as things maybe progress into more of staying at home and staying away from work and whatever. How can you reach out to your neighbors and love your neighbors? We don't all have balconies like in Italy and they're singing and doing karaoke together, but have you seen that?
That's
beautiful.
funny.
That's cool.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But how can you do that, right? What does that look like for you? Anyways.
And can I recommend one more thing? If you're
All day.
podcasting during your time at home, there's a podcast called This Cultural Moment, and I've recommended it before on our podcast. And they talk a lot about major cultural shifts and the shift from pre-Christian to Christian era, and then from Christian to post-Christian era, which is where we are now. And we're seeing this kind of disintegration of the secular age.
say that word again. Disintegration or disintegration?
It's both. So
Which-
I was emphasizing the one part of it to
Which word do you mean?
get you to
though?
pay attention. It's the same thing. It's the same word. So disintegration is the word. I just purposely mispronounced it.
Joey's face is great right now.
Whoa. To emphasize, we're seeing the lack of integration, right? We're seeing the secular worldview fall apart before all this happened. And then now, what we're seeing right now is this great, weird moment in history across the world like we've not seen in a long, long time. And so if you want to kind of step back and think about this cultural moment, I found that podcast really helpful to see from a faith perspective, like God's always doing things in these major cultural shifts. Like God's always at work there, bringing his grace through his people. And so it's been really encouraging to me before any of this happened. So.
Any other recommendation things, I guess?
I have a random thing. I saw Kelsey's on our Facebook Live, and I'm going to read it live. She had shared a quote. She doesn't know where it's from, but Kelsey, our nursery director, said, "One of the things that should be said more to those joining a church family is this: be prepared to forgive and ask forgiveness often." And I love that. I was actually going to say, shifting that also into when you're stuck at home with your kids, like church family, this is a chance to be the gospel for them, and a lot of that's going to be repentance, and you're not used to being together this often possibly, and I know my wife and I were talking about what the kids were doing during the live stream, and it was not the most proper stillness and singing. So families, we know that's hard, but yeah, remember this is a chance to show grace and show real life to them and bring them into the process of, man, this is hard and strange, but let's learn together. So anyway, thanks, Kelsey, for sharing that anonymous quote.
Or unknown quote, I guess.
Unknown. Uncredited. Disintegrated.
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 Oh my goodness, y'all!
Disintegrated.
We've lost it. We've gone too long. Other resources. I know lots of zoos and museums are doing free, like online virtual tours of zoos and museums.
Cool.
Maybe we can find links to that, or y'all could share them if you have them in the stream. I know several Mets are doing free, like daily operas and string things. We've seen, I think your wife maybe shared, string like quartets, violins, and cellos and oboes and things. Not oboes, I don't know.
Elbows?
Head, shoulders, knees, and toes. I think your wife shared a free painting class, maybe?
Oh, yeah. She
Um,
mentioned that to me. Yeah.
I saw that there's some free CPR, not certification, but like CPR classes. So there's lots of people who are being helpers and who are putting things out. So I know not Gospel Coalition, New City Catechism has a curriculum out that you can use now. I don't know if that's free, and if it's not, it needs to be New City Catechism. Fix it.
Yeah.
Other resources, things that you guys have seen that people are doing?
In previous flu epidemics or outbreaks, they realized that being outdoors really did help people. So that's just another reminder, going for a walk and sitting in your backyard or your front porch or what,
Yeah, I think when we hear social distancing and stay 6 feet apart and stay at home, etc., and don't go to work, we don't get this full picture. Social distancing, you can be in your backyard. You can go on walks as long as you stay away from people. You can go to parks. I wouldn't play on the playground probably, but you can go run in the grass and spread out. You can, they're saying if you have to drive somewhere, drive alone. That doesn't really work with families, but maybe your family stays alone and you're trying to keep your family and your, I guess, unit from interacting with too many others to help slow the spread is our goal, or the goal, not our goal necessarily. But so you can still be outside. You can go on walks. You can go to parks. Just keep your distance from people.
I'm going to start a World of Warcraft tournament with our entire church.
Well, I did
Just
start.
kidding.
I
I've
did
never
start
played-
twitching
never
myself
played.
playing Animal Crossing.
What?
I don't know.
Puppy.
Use this time to start exercising people. Do not start playing video games, please.
Yeah.
Sorry, I've never played World of Warcraft, just for the record, but that sounded like a funny thing to say.
That's literally what you're doing on your laptop right now.
I'm winning. I'm on a campaign.
have
Is
no
that what
clue.
you call it?
I don't know. I did contemplate. This is probably the saddest in our house right now. Is baseball is the saddest part of this for.
Right.
Claudia has been asking, and without, I mean, so baseball season ended, October time frame, World Series is over, whatever, blah, blah. Enough drama about that. Don't even want to talk about the drama behind all that. But she was sad because we watched baseball, maybe once a week we'd watch a game or something, but she really enjoyed it, would pretend to be the pitcher and the batter, etc. Loves baseball. And so she has been asking us, unprompted, because we told her baseball doesn't come back till April. So about once a week, she'll say, like, how much longer till April? When's April? And so now I'm like, what are we going to do without baseball? We were getting so close. We were telling her it's so close. And now, we can't even watch spring training games right now. That's all. It's all
But
canceled.
now you can go outside and play baseball.
And we
Backyard
do
baseball.
already, and we have. But
Our kids were your kids' age when September 11th happened.
yeah,
And we were going to go to a balloon glow and trying to explain to our kids, well, some naughty people tried to hurt somebody, so we're not having the balloon glow. Like it's hot air balloons, having a big event outside, and they were so sad.
You guys are missing this opportunity to say, listen, child, this has become an idol in your life, and
Yes.
you need to put it to death. Just kidding.
Finish.
I really want to see a video of Claudia pretending to play baseball. That is my request. That
I'm
needs to
sure I
happen.
have it on
Needs
my
to happen.
phone.
Okay.
I'll try and find it and pull it out.
Beautiful.
It'll be in the show notes.
Yeah.
Not really. I don't put my children in the show notes. Other thoughts, ideas, ways to stay sane when you're quarantined for the next 2 weeks? Maybe.
I would say for sure the thing that comes to mind is if this is a totally new thing for you, like your kids are stuck at home from school, they usually aren't, build a new rhythm and
For
make
sure.
make Bible reading a part of it.
Like a schedule.
I think when your schedule's disrupted, I see this happen on vacations too. When a schedule is thrown out, the Bible goes by the wayside too. So be careful of that. I need to be careful of that. I'm going to try to do that as well. But maybe this is a new chance to say, what's our new morning routine? We're going to do this and this and this.
Yeah. That's a
that
really
might be
good word.
Practical.
And this is my grandbaby. She's really cute for the live stream.
No way you can see that.
Like
we won't
2
we won't put
centimeters.
her in the show notes either. You can find her on
Wait,
Facebook.
get really close to the camera. You can, Dave.
No,
Do it.
don't. Please don't. Oh, no. Oh, no.
Yeah.
It's happening.
Okay.
It's happening.
Hold on, there's the delay. I couldn't see what.
Well, it happened. I'm sure it's fine. Y'all good? We done?
Anything else?
Jim's done.
We're so close to ending. I feel like we need to drag it out a little more.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm
What are we
sure
gonna have for
everybody
lunch,
loves it.
guys? Let's decide on the podcast.
Do you guys want to go to lunch? I'd love to. Can we continue the live stream? Can we just carry it with us? It's portable, isn't
Grab
it?
the camera.
right.
Does the battery work?
It does. It's all charged up. Well, I'm going to end us. Can I end us? Thanks for tuning in. It's been Sunday Recap. We've had fun. It's been different. It's been real. Look out for the bonus episode if you're listening via podcast. It should be in your stream shortly. If you're watching this on video, you probably saw the bonus episode because it was first in the stream. But check out bgrace.org/podcast. As always, if you want more information about Grace Bible Church, visit bgrace.org. During this pandemic, Chris will be releasing a new website.
I want to. Can I, Dave?
Sure.
Okay.
It's happening. bgrace.org. Check it out in the next couple of days. But do follow us on social media. Check your emails. We'll be sending updates about what we're doing in response to coronavirus. We'll keep you informed. If you have questions, you can always call the church office, 254-690-1728. Maybe. I don't know. I think that's the number. Email office at bgrace.org. I don't know. We want to be in touch with you and keep you in the loop. We want to help you. We want to help be helpers and help you be helpers. So check us out. And we'll be
Helpers
done.
helping helpers help.
Helping hands, helping hands. God made me with helping hands.
Amen.